The responses from the various prosecutors in this case have a great deal of variance. First of all, my initial contact, of course, was with Prosecutor Worthy. She works in Wayne County and has a much heavier schedule than any other prosecutor in the state of Michigan. She has returned all my calls. Now, I normally deal with Rob Moran, one of her chief assistants, but she's made herself available to me anytime I wanted to talk to her. Prosecutor Moran and Inspector Williams have been out to my house many times. I'd estimate as many as 4, maybe in excess of 6, to bring me up to date on certain things or to alleviate my concerns over certain things. And in fact, I'm going to meet with them again in a few days at my house. Prosecutor Cooper has never met with me in my judgment. We'll get into that a little later when she said we had 27 meetings, and that's a large difference, and we'll discuss that. And she has a tendency to talk to the media and not talk to the victims. Now, I was asked early on by a friend of mine if I wanted to meet with Richard Thompson, the chief assistant prosecutor back in '77, and the person who was elected to succeed Mr. Patterson as prosecutor, and I told him I would welcome that opportunity. And he made arrangements for me to attend a social function in his neighborhood where Mr. Thompson was going to solicit funds to challenge Obamacare, and I was pleased to attend that meeting. I was introduced to Mr. Thompson, but I wasn't there to give him any money. I told him who I was. He said, "Oh yeah, the Blue Gremlin." Well, we've heard about the Blue Gremlin earlier in this presentation. But of course he wasn't there to talk to me, and I called him after that, told him I would like to chat with him about his recollection of the case. He said he didn't have very much, but I did take excerpts from the Michigan State Police reports and mailed them to them, which indicated that he had driven up to the Stebbins polygraph case involving Bush and Green on January 28, 1977, in a heavy snowstorm. It's the story of the year in 1977. It's probably the most heinous unsolved crime in the state of Michigan, and he doesn't remember. He never called me back after that. I wrote him a follow-up letter on March the 16th, 2012, saying please discuss with me about what happened. And he's not called me back. The Michigan State Police reports from Williams and Gray to Lieutenant Hill say that Thompson thinks Bush was involved. No explanation for that from anybody yet. And we do know on the June 25th, 2012 meeting, which Mr. Walton had with Chris and Lisa and me, that Mr. Thompson on this Bush criminal file in Oakland County had written down "No deals, R. Thompson." But he doesn't remember anything. You'll also recall that when we discussed the Montmorency files, I told you about the letter from Assistant Prosecutor Fullerton in which she said Judge Bordelais, the judge in Flint, would agree to reduce charges to Bush, but he would insist on jail time. And you'll recall that now Judge Fullerton won't return any of my calls, and she doesn't remember either. Marnie Keenan told me she tried to call Robert Leonard, the prosecutor in Flint, back when Timmy was missing, to see what he remembered. And he said he didn't remember anything, but she did send him information from the files indicating his possible involvement. She never heard back from him either. And the last prosecutor that I had any contact with was Dave Corsica, Prosecutor Cooper's predecessor. Interestingly enough, Dave joined my law firm on January 1st this year, and I went up to his office and sat down with him, told him who I was and the status of my investigation. He said, Barry, I've still got some files from that case that I'd make available to you if it doesn't violate my ethics. But I haven't looked into it, but Dave and I superficially agreed that if he had prosecutorial files and I had a lawsuit going with him, that he shouldn't release them to me. I would suggest maybe one of the law enforcement officials ought to meet with him and get that report and take a look at it and see what happens. But Dave told me he thought the Bush lead was the best lead they'd had to date on solving the Oakland County child killer case. And we talked for 15 or 20 minutes, I think. And at the end, I said, Dave, I'm not a conspiratist. I just went into this case to solve the case, which is all I really want anyways. But I said, the more information I get and the more silence I get from people, the more I'm concerned that there might have been some major pedophile activities in Oakland County in the 1970s involving people in high places. And Dave said, I heard the same rumors. Now that's the story of prosecutorial responses. Wayne County comes out to see me. I don't even have to go see them. Oakland County, Cooper won't talk to me at all. And once we open up doors for Thompson, Fullerton, Leonard, there's no response. And don't forget, the Michigan Constitution says crime victims have a right to confer with the prosecutor. All the judges who looked at that case haven't answered that question yet, but I certainly hope one of them does.